Do you ever find yourself on a panel where you're like, I have no idea why I'm on this panel? And I don't mean I have no idea in the sense of, oh, I'm an electrical engineering professor and I have no idea why I'm presenting to these scholars of ancient Greek drama. I mean, I have no idea, like, oh my goodness gracious, I examined the dais for this particular event and there's no way that these people on this dais have anything to learn from yours truly. So before I get too much further into my insecure lamentations, let me thank Judith and Ava and everybody else for their hospitality and inviting me to be part of this conference. But it kind of occurred to me that I have no idea is an important landing spot for a little panel on gameful pedagogy. I have no idea is a really important part of a gameful worldview when it comes to teaching. And so I'm actually quite happy to say to you that I'm Rob Carroll and I have no idea. None whatsoever. My primary thesis of today's talk is that whenever one finds oneself at the I have no idea moment that's such a big part of being a teacher, whenever you find yourself in a moment like that, it might be a good time to focus on storytelling. So let me tell you about 3 problems I've had lately where I had no idea and where storytelling was pretty helpful. Problem the first. How does anybody teach game theory, the rigorous study of strategic interdependence, to math-phobic undergraduates in political science? I have no idea. So when we find ourselves at moments like those, we ought to try telling stories. I want to tell you 2 stories. Once upon a time, there were 2 shepherds. So once upon a time, there was a fox. Once upon a time, there were 2 musical companions. Once upon a time, there were 2 kings. Once upon a time, there were 2 angst-ridden adolescents. Once upon a time, you were a student and I was a professor. If we view models as fables, succinct, memorable depictions that aren't supposed to capture everything about reality, but where the fable is just a device that allows me to convey meaning to you so that you might be able to relate states of affairs to one another, if I can tell you a story, then we're already in a playful worldview. Some of these fables are very well known, like The Prisoner's Dilemma, and others are improvised as I'm filming. And still others are meta-fables where I encourage students to use a model not as a way to try to understand something, but as a way to try to understand themselves, a tool for introspection. But this creates a second problem. If you show them these fables and then say, oh, look how frivolous this all is, some of them are going to ask you for real-world examples. But I don't want to tell them things about the real world, because if I tell them things about the real world, if I give them real-world examples, they're going to latch on to details. So the question becomes, how do we give them enough meaning, enough flesh that they can understand the story without having to understand the math all the way, but where I can't use the real world because they're going to try to use the real world all the way and lose the math? And the answer to that question is I have no idea. And when we have no idea, we ought to turn to stories. You make a fake world up. You just make up a fake world where you control the history, you control the details, and you can show them at your own pace so that the students have no choice but to inject themselves into the story. So that's what I've done. I've created a world called Olympia. The problem sets are all focused on Olympia. So the students really do visit the land of make-believe each week. These are narrated by an unreliable narrator named Socrates, who is a somewhat bitter and self-righteous political science professor. And he hates the technocrats that give him this job. But one of the technocrats, Technocrat 143, starts to leave him some breadcrumbs. And the breadcrumbs, of course, all have something to do with game theory. And the students don't mind that too much. They don't mind the fact that they can figure out that I'm just completely bullshitting them. Which is to say, the students are willing to play along if you tell them that you're playing. However, my gameful approach to assessing, my gameful approach to game theoretic modeling has created another problem. It's very natural to want to use formative assessment in a flipped classroom for technical material where the students aren't really going to get it all the way. But the problem is, how do we encourage students to chase after the awesome when we're giving them pass-fail? And the answer to that question is I have no idea. And so what I've done this semester is create something called the Alma token. So an Alma token is something the students can earn by either answering wicked hard questions that are on the problem sets, or they can get Almas for asking really great questions during our meetings. Students can use these Alma tokens a variety of ways. For example, they can purchase the right to redo a problem set that they failed. They can buy off one part of their final. We're also going to be having an auction at the end of the semester where students can use their Alma tokens to purchase NFTs that are inspired by the class or maybe U of I more generally. But my gameful approach to incentivizing awesomeness on the gameful problem sets I've developed to make sure that the students can have a gameful approach to mathematical models in the social sciences has created yet another problem. How do I know if it's working? Now, anecdotally, I can tell you it's working. First of all, they're having fun, which is awesome. But second of all, the number of them that really fully understand the rationality postulates, that really understand the assumptions that live underneath the hood of game theory, the number of them that are just completely nerded out on things like how do we aggregate preferences in a good way. But beyond anecdotes, I have no idea. I have no idea what I ought to be looking for in terms of how well the students are doing. And because I have no idea, I think we ought to turn to stories. The problem is I'm out of stories to tell, and I think it's come time to ask the students for theirs. It isn't obvious to me that the usual survey sort of stuff is what we're looking for. I think we need genuine qualitative evidence of how the students are responding to things. I hope you've enjoyed your little visit to the strange world that I've created for our students, and I hope that it's in some small measure helped you with your own teaching. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have a chance to talk to you all about this, even though I feel a little bit sheepish about telling anybody other than my students about it. The only other person I tell about this is my wife, and she assures me that I can't do short form. In fact, she told me that I wouldn't be able to come up with a conclusion for this stupid talk. And boy, was she wrong. Thanks for watching.